This podcast is brought to you by the Islamic Center and NYU. For more information, visit our website at www.icnyu.org.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to this weekly Halaqa. Glad to have you guys here. Thank you for bringing your heart. So today's topic is about the mental and emotional and spiritual power of hardships and tests. And I really think this is a topic we need to address in depth because there's just this increase of people feeling burned out, feeling like, they're overwhelmed by their tests. They're not really having a sense of like how to put their tests in the context of their relationship with Allah, right? And I think it's so important to always revisit this topic because what is the constant in our lives? Tests, right? Struggles. There will never be a time when none of us are just going to be like never tested, right? We're always going to be tested, and that's pretty much the constant, right? It's something that is part of this dunya. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us about, right? That we are going to be tested on this path, that we're not going to just be left to say we believe and just go through ease, right? And so tests are a natural part of our path, but it's really important to always assess how we view our tests, how we are reacting to our tests, how we're responding to our tests. How am I interpreting my tests? And whether it's you're going through, tests in your relationships, whether it's like, loss of someone, whether it's burnout, feeling stressed over all the time and not feeling a sense of nourishment from the things that you do every day. This is something that I feel is really on the increase. People are doing a lot, but then they go to bed and they feel like, what am I getting out of all these things I'm doing, right? They're not feeling a sense of calm, a sense of nourishment, or a sense of meaning from a lot of the things they're doing, right? And when that happens, we have to, so this talk today is not just if you're going through like a big test. This could be as simple as you feel burned out. You feel like, you're doing a lot and you feel stressed all the time. And when things like this happen, whether we're tested, whether we are going through burnout, we have to always like take inventory, take a pause and stop and think of like, how am I living my life and how am I responding to this test? How am I viewing my test? How am I, interpreting what I'm witnessing on my path? And so today I want to go over just the meaning of hardships from an Islamic perspective, but I also want to share with you a few verses from Surah Taha, which is a really beautiful chapter in the Quran to connect to and to really sit with when you're going through difficulty. So first, let's talk about what is a hardship, right? It's any struggle, pain, or difficulty experienced on a spiritual, physical, or psychological level, and in any area of life, family, health, financially, right? That's a hardship. Anything that is not comfortable. And the common denominator of all hardship is a loss of security. And I want you to think about this, right? What makes a test, right? What makes it a hardship? It's that we're losing something. We're losing a sense of security in one area or another. So think about this. Sometimes you're tested and you lose emotional security, right? Sometimes you're tested, you lose physical security. Sometimes you're tested, you lose financial security. Sometimes you're tested, you lose a relationship security. Maybe you felt secure in a relationship, that relationship is gone, right? Safety, physical safety, right? That's another sense of security, roof over your head, right? So if you think about it, as human beings, we look for security, right? And that's what the nafs wants. It wants to always be comfortable. It wants to always feel that great sense of security. And anytime it is shaken, right? We're just like, what's happening here? And I think one of the things that I feel is exacerbating a lot of our struggles is the expectation that ease is the norm, right? That like our life should be easy. It's this entitlement to my life should be easy. I think this belief exacerbates a lot of our struggles because we're approaching our tests as what? You're an intruder. You don't belong here. You're not part of my life. You're not part of my path. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells in the Quran, it's the opposite, right? that we're not going to left without being tested. And there are many, many beauties, to being tested and many meanings behind being tested. But if we look at test as or discomfort as an intrusion, what happens when that test enters into your life or discomfort enters your life? What are you doing here? You don't belong here. So what do? We resist. And that's energy, right? That's energy going into you resisting the test. It's like someone's trying to enter your house and you're like, no, you're pushing the door against them, right? You can't get in. And that's how many people, I feel, especially in our day and age, more than ever, I feel that we look at tests as they don't belong here. We look at ease and comfort as expected, always. And so whenever we feel a little uncomfortable, we're just like, hey, what's happening here? I'm not entitled. I'm entitled to more than this. I'm entitled to constant ease. I'm entitled to constant comfort, right? And so this mindset makes struggles get worse, because now instead of accepting the struggle, accepting whatever you're witnessing in life, you're spending all this energy pushing it away, right? And so this causes more. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, and certainly we shall test you with something of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to as-sabirin, the patient, who when afflicted with calamity say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, right? Which is truly to Allah we belong and truly to him we shall return. They are those on whom the salawat from their Lord and receive his, and those who receive his mercy, and is they who are guided, who are the guided ones. So here Allah tells us, we will test you, we shall test you. It's part of life, right? And we know that tests don't have to be big calamities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that even a prick of a thorn, right, is an expiation of our sins, right? So even that little bit of discomfort has meaning for us. So what do tests do for us spiritually? One, they point us to truth, right? Because when in Surah Al-Ankabut, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do people think that they will be left alone because they say we believe and will not be tested? And we indeed tested those who were before them. And Allah will certainly make known those who are true, or the truth of those who are true, right? And will certainly make it known the falsehood of those who are liars. So I want you to think about this, right? Here, Allah is saying the purpose of a test is to make what known? The truth, right? That's what he's saying. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that the test is there to serve the purpose of bringing the truth to light. Now we ask the question, doesn't Allah already know the truth? Of course he does, right? So then why is Allah testing? Who does he want to know the truth? Who is he putting the test for to know the truth? Us. And I can tell you, as a psychologist, when I see people going through struggles and they come in work, during therapy, that's what actually a test does. It brings the truth to the surface, the truth of who they are, the truth of what no longer serves them, right? So this is, yes, the greater truth, the truth of your claim. You said we believe. You said, I believe, right? I believe, I understand the path. I understand I have a creator. I understand there are going to be tests, right? I believe in Allah. I believe in his plan. I claim all of these things, but then we're tested. Is it true? So the test is there to show you the truth of your heart, the truth of your beliefs. But let's take it a step further, right? That is the ultimate truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us, right? Are you in line with your claims? Is your iman, is your faith a lived thing, a lived reality? Is it going to show in your reaction when you are tested, right? But also, like I said, from a mental and emotional point of view, it shows you also many layers of truth, like the truth of what no longer belongs in your life, the truth of who you are. And when I say that is that I want you to think about this. In Islam, we know that there's this concept of the fitrah, right? That we're born upon this innate truth, this innate purity. And then you go through life and we get distant from that fitrah, through the things that we do, through the way we interpret our life experiences. And then you're hit with a test. The way you react to the test, if you react to it positively, and not positively, I don't mean like you say like, toxic positivity, like everything is great. No, I mean like when you react to it in an effective way, what happens actually is a process is created where you can see all the false layers you've been carrying. All the layers that you've added on, all the weight you've been carrying that does not belong to you. The things that Allah never asked you to carry, right? The things about yourself that aren't really who you are. That you are presenting yourself in such a way, but that's not really your truth. You're surrounding yourself maybe with people who don't reflect your values. You're not living in line with your values. When you test, that's what tests do. They shake the boat. They cause you to ask questions. And they really create a process of change for us that times of ease cannot. But if we constantly look at our tests and our struggles as like intruders, will we really allow for a process to happen where we can change? No, we won't, because we're building a wall. And if many of us look at tests as a lot, like, especially if like we don't understand it accurately, a lot of people look at tests as Allah's taking something away. That's all they see. Allah's taking something away from me, not as Allah giving them something. Allah beautifying you in a different way. Allah molding you in a different way, right? I really like this example. I don't know who wrote it, but it's basically in line with this concept of the truth coming out. And it says, you're holding a cup of coffee when someone comes along and bumps into you, making you spill your coffee everywhere. Why did you spill the coffee? You spilled the coffee because there was coffee in your cup. Had there been tea in the cup, you would have spilled tea, right? The point is whatever is inside the cup is what will spill out. Therefore, when life comes along and shakes you, which will happen, whatever is inside of you will come out. It's easy to fake it until you get rattled, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what's in my cup? When life gets tough, what spills out? Joy, gratefulness, peace, humility, or does anger, resentment, bitterness, harsh words, and reactions come out? You choose, right? So the key is to look at it as, okay, what is Allah pointing me to about myself? What is he showing me about my cup? What is he showing me about what I've been carrying that does not serve me, that does not serve my path to him, that does not serve my inner peace, my joy? And honestly, I can tell you that people don't really achieve this greater sense of inner peace until they have been tested, because that's when you figure out who you are. That's when you figure out what you've been doing. That's when you get clarity on when you respond to it effectively, right? So tests point us to truth. They remind us of our need of Allah, right? I mean, this is, sorry, one second. So they remind us of our need of Allah, and this is something that we as human beings, insan, which comes from the word nasiya, right? Forgetful, we're forgetful. We forget our need for Allah. We forget that we are abd, right? That we are his servants. We are in need of him constantly. And so when we forget this, a test is what does a test do? It reminds you of your limitations. It reminds you that you need him. And that's the way it was designed. You were never meant to carry life alone. You were never meant to carry the burden alone. One of my students was saying that, she was working on the module of, in a program I offer, working on the module of understanding that that you are not meant to carry the test alone. And she said, I never realized how much I carry and think in my mind that I'm depending on myself to carry it alone. And just that one shift in thought can make you feel lighter, is that you were never meant to carry it alone. just as a mother would never expect her child to carry their struggles alone. And so there are means to experiencing God's love and closeness. And this is something that, we know from our faith that Allah loves those whom he tests, right? And I know that when we don't understand this, I've even heard people say in reaction to this sometimes, is that if that's love, I don't want it, because they don't see the love through the test. All they see is what? The pain. I'm in pain. This is love. But it's because they see the pain as the destination. They see the pain as the source. They don't see that Allah's love, through Allah's love, he's giving you this test is designed to give you, not take away from you. And that's the thing. I mean, if you look, and we apply this to so many other things, right? We know what's a famous phrase? No pain, no gain, right? Like we know this. We know that there's nothing worth having comes easy. We know this. So it's a universal truth, right? That anything that comes easy is not worth having. And it's anything that is worth having requires hard work. It requires tests. It requires struggle. And so why? Because the struggle molds you. The test molds you. It shapes you. It prepares you for your path, for what you're meant to do. Tests are a means to purifying the heart and molding it to be sound and whole. They are meant to mold our state to be fitting for the best of places, which is Jannah. And if you think about this, right? If we understand this concept of just even getting into a graduate school. We're like, okay, yeah, I know I'm going to be tested. I have to actually take a test, right? I have to struggle. I have to study. We never expect that we're just going to like get into, something compared to Jannah, graduate school, right? We just think like, oh, hey, like, I know that that's going to require me to work hard. But then we think Jannah, this most perfect place, we think that just like supposed to come easy. And when we get tested, we lose sight of that. Like when someone has their destination clear on their path and they get tested, like let's say they were trying to get into medical school, they know it's going to be a test. And when they're tested, what keeps them going? Their goal. What do we all as Muslims say, what is our ultimate goal? We say Jannah, right? And so when we get tested, that's the time to really keep the heart fixated on that ultimate goal, to keep our vision really clear and sharp on that goal. And what's happening a lot of times is, especially more than ever, it just feels like because we're disconnected from the akhirah, we're disconnected from that goal, all we see is this world is our permanent destination. So when we get tested, we're like, all we see is like the test robbing us of so many things, but we're disconnected from what we're gaining. Now, back to the example of the person who's striving hard to go to medical school, they're going to be like, okay, well, this is worth it. Because once I get to medical school, then all this hard work is going to be worth it, right? Allah tells us nothing you do is lost in vain. Allah does not make anyone's effort get lost. There's no good that you will do that he will make it get lost. It won't be without a reward. It won't be without him seeing it. It won't be in vain. How many of us are connected to that? That, like I said earlier, that even a prick of a thorn, which is something so little, a minor discomfort, that itself has meaning in it for us. So imagine then the greater test in life. When Allah withholds something from you and he does not give you something you've been praying for. When Allah tests you through relationships and people, when you are hurt, when you are crying, when you are in emotional pain, when you're in physical pain, imagine then what Allah is doing for you. But if you're disconnected from that, all you see is what? I'm in pain. That's it. This has nothing to offer to me. What am I getting out of this? But it's how you respond to the test, to the pain, that's either going to mold you positively or mold you negatively. Right? And so this is what we want to focus on. And how many of us view our tests as custom tailored for us? We know that each of us are on our own path, with our own psychology, with our own background, with our own personality traits, with our own set of strengths and weaknesses. And Allah knows his creation best. Therefore, your test is not going to be like her test, right? His test is not going to be like his test. Why? Because Allah knows what he has to give each of you, what he's trying to mold in each of us. So for one, he might say, withholding this, we'll give her this, we'll strengthen this within her. Giving the other person this, it might, that's going to strengthen her. So like Allah knows what he's trying to do with each of his servants, what he's trying to cultivate within them, what he's trying to mold within them. How many of us view our tests as custom tailored for each of our own hearts and lives? That you're on your own path with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what he does for you is perfectly designed to mold you. And this is where I want to bring you to Surah Taha, right? Surah Taha is so beautiful for so many reasons. And it was revealed at a time when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was, struggling. And this was, hold on a second. So Surah Taha, it came at a time when, the opposition in Mecca was so strong, turning into verbal accusations and persecution, abuse, right? And so this is also a time when many of the Muslims migrated to Abyssinia, and it was a difficult time for the Prophet ﷺ. It was a difficult time for his people, right? And so, and I want you to think about this, that first, the surah starts out with Taha, which we don't know the actual meaning of those letters, but it says, Ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa, right? That we did not send down this Qur'an to cause you distress. And I want you to think about this, right? And this is a surah that if you read, it has so many meanings and so much power for the heart. If you're going through any struggle, read it as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to you, to your own heart, where he's telling you, this Quran, I did not send it down to cause you distress. In fact, instead, it's the opposite. It's a means to your alleviation. It's a means to your relief. It's the means to your peace. It's the means to your comfort, to your guidance, right? That this is not the source of your distress. This is the source of your relief. But the surah is so powerful because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives us the story of Musa, right? And he recounts Musa, his favors upon Musa, and he tells him, basically reminds him of when his mother put him into the river and he went into the hands of the enemy. And there's a powerful verse that is just, I really want to encourage you to read it as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to you. And this is the verse, this is again when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding Musa of his favors upon him, right? And he says to, so at the end part of one verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Musa, وَأَلْقَيْتَ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِنِّي وَلِتُصْنَعَ عَلَى عَيْنِي. Okay, this is such a beautiful sentence that I want you to really sit with this, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I bestowed upon you love, from me, right? This is as he's telling him, I want you to think about this. Here he is telling him all the tests he put him through and all his favors upon him from his birth, right? So basically, like we put you into the river, we turned you back to your mother, we put you in the hands of the enemy, right? Telling him all these things and how Allah took care of him. And he's saying, وَأَلْقَيْتَ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِنِّي, I have bestowed love upon you from me, right? وَلِتُصْنَعَ عَلَى عَيْنِي, so that you may be brought up under my eye. Tusna, like when we say sana'a, it means like someone who's molding something, right? It's not just like being raised or brought up. It's like a molding. That's honestly, I think of molding as the most of the word that I interpret it as when I'm reading this, because that's what sana'a means. It's like molding, right? So some of the translations will say brought up, raised, right? Formed, another translation. I like the word molded because it's like when you're molding something, you're shaping it, right? You're making it into what you want. Now, who is the best molder? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah is telling Musa this after he tells him that I have bestowed upon, yarhamukallah, I have bestowed upon you love from me, right? So that you may be molded under my eye. And so when we go through tests, how many of us view it as, this is my molding, Allah's molding me. And not just for me to gain many rewards in the akhirah, but so that I can become the person he wants me to be. How many of us look at it like this? No, Allah's not taking anything away from me. Allah is shaping me. Allah is making me who I'm meant to be. Allah is making me arrive at my potential. Allah is making me stronger. Allah is molding me into the best version of myself. We understand this in different ways. Like, when people go on their fitness journey and they start working out, they know they're going to be sore. But they're like, no, I know my body's being molded. I know that my body's getting in shape, right? But we don't apply these to our spiritual journey, our mental and emotional journey, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is molding us through these discomforts, through these tests. But the key is for us to look at them in that way. Because if you look at them as intruders, as something there to rob you of a joy or to rob you of something that you think is yours, you're never going to welcome the test. You're never going to accept the test. And you can't change or be molded by something you have not accepted. If you're in constant resistance mode, you're never going to be molded by that. But if you welcome something, then you could see it. You could learn from it. You can connect with it. The other verse I really want to connect you to, and actually answers a question that one of you asked me the last class, which is, we were talking about how those who don't remember Allah tells us in the Quran that those who don't remember him live a difficult life, right? Do you guys remember this? We talked about the association between living, being absent of Allah's remembrance, right? Having that absence and being associated with difficult life. And one of you asked me, what about all the people that don't remember Allah? I think one of you asked me, I don't remember, but yeah, and they have like enjoyed life. And I actually, after I left, I was like, oh man, I forgot to mention this verse. And this is in Surah Taha. It's a really powerful verse because this is something a lot of people struggle with, right? You either are praying for something. A lot of people could be praying for something and then you see other people easily get it, right? You're struggling and you're doing the right thing and you're not getting the things that maybe other people are getting, right? This is at the end of Surah Taha. So the surah starts out with, right? مَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لِتَشْقَىٰ, that this Quran is not here to cause you distress, right? That we did not send this down upon you, this message, this deen, this way of life, these truths to cause you distress. And then the verse of وَأَلْقَيْتَ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِنِّي, right? That I have bestowed love upon you from me. وَلِتُصْنَعَ عَلَىٰ عَيْنِي, so that you may be molded. But towards the end of the surah, as the surah is wrapping up, Allah tells us, do not let your eyes look longingly or crave, another translation, do not let your eyes crave or look longingly at what we have allowed some of them to enjoy, the fleeting splendor of this worldly life, which we test them with. But your Lord's provision is far better and more lasting. So here Allah is addressing this thing we do as human beings, right? Which is like, okay, but like we're being tested, and there's this idea, this belief that people have, which I look at as a psychological barrier to our iman and to our spiritual, growth, which is if I come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I grow spiritually, my life is going to get harder. So subconsciously, they actually only come close to Allah enough. They don't want to be too close. That's when the tests start pouring in, right? And when I work with people on like psychological barriers that keep them from growing closer to Allah, this is a big one. It's like, yeah, because, when I get closer to Allah, I get tested. Or when I see other people who they think are like pious or righteous, they're like, oh my God, their life is hard, So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to this false belief we have that like, oh, the people who don't follow Allah or don't obey Allah or they're the ones who have the best lives. So he says, again, do not look longingly at what we have allowed, or given some of them to enjoy. So it's temporary. The splendor of this worldly life by which we test them. So whatever we're giving them, all these things that you think are like, oh my God, this means that they're living their best life. Every single one of those things you see them enjoying, we are testing them with. And we were going to ask them about it. Yeah.
Which ayah was that?
This is 131, Surah Taha, chapter 20. But the provision of your Lord is better and more enduring. And now I want to connect you to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us right after this verse. So you get like this statement right here, right? Like Allah's speaking to you, telling you, don't keep looking at what we have given other people. We're testing them by all these things, but what I hold for you is far greater, right? And then immediately right after, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاسْتَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. So right away, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, don't look at all of these, order your people or bid your people to pray and be diligent in observing it. Hold on to your prayer. Hold on to your remembrance of me. And then the second part of this verse is so powerful. We are not asking you for provision. We provide for you. We provide for you, and the best end comes through being mindful of Allah. So first, it was telling you, don't look at all the provisions that we have given other people, that you think they're living, all this, that we're testing them by this. And what Allah holds for you is better. And then he tells you, hold on to your prayer and bid your people to bid those you love basically to pray. Hold on to this prayer. Hold on to remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do not ask you for provision, meaning all this risk, all this provision that you're concerned about, looking around, thinking, why did Allah give this person this? Why am I practicing and I'm struggling the most and someone else who's not practicing? Allah's saying, we did not ask you for provision. You're not in charge of your own provision. We never put you in charge to provide for yourself. We told you, like, basically you have to put in the effort, but we didn't put you in charge of the provision. We provide for you. So Allah's reminding you again that it's not on you. Just hold on to the rope of Allah. Hold on to remembering me. Turn your heart consistently towards him. Keep walking to him towards all your conditions. But he's the one who's in charge of your remembrance, of your provision. And so and another translation, it is, we do not ask you to provide sustenance. It is we who provide sustenance for you, and the future belongs to those who are God conscious. Meaning, maybe today, it seems like the people, it seems like, oh, you think all these people have all these things and are not obeying Allah, they have it all together, right? No, the future belongs to those who are God conscious, right? To those who hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These things really help us in approaching our tests because it's about meaning. And we know this in psychology. We say pain, in existential psychology, we say pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. And they look at what is it that translates pain, because pain is a natural part of life. It wouldn't be a test if you didn't feel pain, right? Would we call it a test if you didn't feel some kind of emotional pain or some kind of physical pain or some kind of pain in any direction, right? It wouldn't be. You wouldn't even be saying it's a test. It becomes a test because it comes with pain, right? And so, when we are existential psychology looks at the difference between pain and suffering. And they say suffering is when you cannot derive meaning from your pain. So pain, you're going to experience through all your tests. But it turns to suffering when you look at your pain and you don't see yourself getting anything from it. Anything meaningful, anything of value, because that's what meaning is. Meaning is something of value. But everything about Islam, everything about its teachings is about helping us see meaning in everything you go through. You get tested, there's meaning in this. Allah gives you blessings, there's meaning in this, And so we have this entire way of life that teaches us how to cultivate a mind and a heart that looks for meaning and seeks meaning. And now they tell you in psychology, this is so fundamental to our emotional well-being, to our mental health, to cultivate minds and hearts that looks for meaning and connects to the meaning of the situations we go through. And so connecting to the Quran, connecting to the stories of the Quran and the stories of the prophets, alayhum salam, is such a powerful way for us to see the meaning through all of our struggles, because nobody is tested like the prophets, right? And so we know this. We know that the ones who were tested the most were the prophets. And this goes back to Allah loves those whom he tests, right? The prophets are the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and we are tested based on our level of faith. And that's the reality of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us more than we can handle. And if the test feels unbearable, right? Like sometimes people say, I can't handle it. I don't understand this verse because I can't handle it. I feel like I can't handle. So I always say, look at what we bring into the test, because we can exacerbate pain so easily. by the way that we're interpreting the test, by how are we interpreting the test as Allah hates me, as there's something wrong with me, right? As they're like interpreting as a negative view of yourself. These things matter because now you're carrying this test, but now you've added on all these interpretations that produce these really difficult, heavy emotions that now you're carrying in addition to the test itself. That was not there to reflect his hate for you. In fact, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us in Surah Al-Duha? مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى, right? Your Lord has not abandoned you, nor does he hate you. Allah tells us this because he knows. He knows how the human being, he knows his creation. So Sa'ad ibn Waqqas radiallahu anhu said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, which of the people are most sorely tested or painfully tested? He said, the prophets, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the prophets, then the next best and the next best. A man will be tested in accordance with his level of faith. If his faith is strong, he'll be tested more severely. And if his faith is weak, he'll be tested in accordance with his faith. Calamity will keep befalling a person until he walks on the earth with no sin on him. So if we know that tests are a natural part of life, then it should empower us to say, okay, well, then I need to change how I'm going to view these tests, how I'm going to interpret these tests, because I'm not going to sit and fight something or try to keep something from happening that's a natural part of my life. Let's go back to that statement of if that's love, I don't want it, right? How many of you have heard someone say that or that resonates? Okay, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I look at it differently, right? So I get what you're saying, right? If someone says, oh, if they hit you and say, I love you, right? It's like, okay, that's not love, right? This is different though. Well, not a little different, it's a lot different. When two people are in a relationship, right? Let's take two spouses who are going through a struggle, right? They say that, and I've worked with couples, so I can attest to this, right? Like if two couples go through a struggle, they hold on to each other. What does it do to their love? Yeah, they actually often look back and say, look at that time very fondly and very lovingly. Wow, that was difficult, but wow, we really got stronger and our love grew. And we held on to each other, and they look at it with such compassion and love and almost like a nostalgic kind, even though when they were going through it, it was a really tough time. But let's take the opposite. If two people are fighting each other during the test comes and then they're angry at each other. So they're blaming, pointing fingers. It's your fault that we're being tested. It's your fault that this is happening to us. What happens to the relationship? A lot of times it gets worse and the love diminishes, and a lot of times people break apart. So if Allah gave us the test to hold on to him, it's because he wants you to see his love for you, right? And a lot of times what happens is that we are given a test and we don't say this out loud, but subconsciously we're like, I got it. Thank you. Got the test. Thank you. And I got it from here. But Allah did not ask you to get it from here. The test is there so you could hold on to him, so that you can see what he has to offer you. So let's break this apart, right? You go through a test. It's painful. It's a struggle. And you're hit with the limitation of who you are as a human being. You don't have all the answers. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You're hit with the uncertainty, right? You're hit with all of these things. And then you take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you feel that rahmah and you feel that closeness. It was always there, by the way. But in times of ease, we forget. In times of ease, we wouldn't really have a means to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you start holding on to Allah. He starts opening your heart. He starts making you see things differently because he's the one who unveils, right? If you depend on yourself to go through the test, you're limited. But if you depend on Allah as you're going through the test, he unveils you. He allows you to see what you need to see. He allows you to see the truth of who he is, the truth of who you are, the truth of what this test came to offer you. When you start going through the test with Allah and you see that because of this test, you're growing stronger. you had to let go of a lot of things that were harmful for you. It's painful. It's painful, but look at you. You're thriving. You're becoming a different person. You're now that thing that you depended on for your worth, you freed yourself from. And this is a gift that a lot of people, when Allah withholds something from you, Allah could easily give you what you're asking for. But when he withholds something from you, he's giving you the power to free your worth from that thing. So if someone withholds, for example, he could easily give somebody a child, someone who's been, two people who are asking for a child, right? One person gets the child, right? Another person is still asking Allah. But you know what happens to this person? This person might be so attached to the child that their worth, now they depended their worth on having that child. But Allah tells us on the day of judgment, no wealth, no children will benefit you except what? Except one who brings to Allah qalbin salim, a sound heart. I know it's often translated as a sound heart, but I want you to think about this. Salim is something that is complete, something that is whole. A lot of, something that is basically, so if you think about it, like no wealth or children, meaning what? Your wealth does not complete you. Your children do not complete you. Your spouses do not complete you, right? Even the concept of like my other half, right? We know that we say that marriage completes your deen, but it doesn't complete your worth, right? Your children do not complete your worth, your wealth, your houses do not complete your worth, right? Why? What is the meaning of this? Is that would Allah depend your wholeness on something he could take away? He wouldn't. Would Allah say you're only worthy if I give you this temporary thing? He wouldn't. So when Allah withholds something from you, he's giving you a power that he did not give somebody else who he easily gave that thing. That's love. That means that he sees in you something he didn't see in that other person. He's giving you the power to say, to free yourself, to free your worth from that thing. So when he does give you those blessings, guess what? You put them in the right place. You don't own your children. They belong to Allah. That they're not a reflection of your worth, right? That your worth is complete through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a freedom that a lot of people don't have. But when you start experiencing the beauties of this empowerment, this, divine empowerment that Allah gives you, then you're like, wow, you begin to look at your test so differently. And yes, you do see Allah's love for you because you see what he's giving you. As they say, a blessing in disguise, right? So when we look at things and we break them apart, we see the reality of why tests are associated with Allah's love. Because, the Sahaba, the companions, would actually worry when they'd go through periods of time where they weren't tested. They would be worried. They'd be like, they'd be concerned because they know that tests are a means to Allah's closeness. And they're like a time for them to prove their iman and a time for them to step up. And, and so like, it really depends on the questions we're asking. Instead of why, Ya Allah, are you giving me this? Why are you, why is this happening? Why this person, not me? Why? That only creates resentment, anger, and a block from you actually deriving meaning and beauty from your test. But when we ask, what is Allah trying to mold me to be? What is he trying to teach me through this test? What is he trying to give me? You hold on to Allah more. Now you're embracing the test, looking for what it has to offer you. Now you understand this is your period of molding. You roll up your sleeves. You embrace the growth and the opportunity of growth more easily. And again, we apply this in so many other things, but when it comes to our spiritual path, we're a little hesitant. If you start a job and the boss is giving you more work, a lot of times people are like, oh, that's a sign that they see that I'm capable. And they look at that as like, okay, this is hard, but I'm going to step up. I want to show that I'm capable of doing this so I can get a promotion, right? Isn't that like what people do, right? Allah gives you a test and you're like, what? Right? But with our work, we're just like, we look at that as, wow, they see something in me. They see something in me to give me greater responsibility in this position. And if they didn't, they probably wouldn't, right? If they didn't think you were capable, I mean, I know in the workplace, I hear people sometimes they'll say they fought for a certain role, or, they're like, no, they want more work because it shows that like they got it, right? They got what they know what they're doing, and it's like a testament to their skills, right? So we need to look at it the same with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wusaha. That Allah does not burden a soul more than it can bear. When Allah's testing you, trust me, asking different questions has such a huge impact. Instead of resisting, why me, you're only breeding more anger and resentment in your heart. And that makes you look at everything in like, almost like you wore like these dark glasses, where it's just like, you can't see what he has in store for you. But when you learn to ask different questions, you begin to become an explorer. Like, okay, Allah, what is this here to help me with? I know that it wouldn't be here unless you've designed it to give me something. Okay, alhamdulillah. Yeah, I thought of it after I left. I was like, oh man. And it's because this verse is so, I feel like it's one of those verses we really need to hold on to, especially in this day and age with social media and everything. And when I read it every time, I'm like, oh my God, wallahi, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like answering this, because this is a question a lot of people have when they start practicing. Like, I hear things a lot of times, like I've been wearing hijab and I've been doing this, and it's like, it's hard. It's a test, right? Like I've been practicing, I've been avoiding this. I haven't been, and it's like, but I see people who aren't doing that. It's a big fitna. It's a big test. So this is a great verse to really connect our hearts to. Well, I think it's that you think positively of Allah, right? Like, to have husn al-dhan, a good opinion of your Lord. It's not that you're claiming to know Allah's wisdom behind it. If you say punishment. Yeah, like you're not claiming. Yeah, like I remember my teacher when we were studying Surah Al-Fajr, he said one time, the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example of the person who وَإِذَا أَكْرَمَهُ اللَّهُ رَبَّهُ فَقَالَ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِي, right? Like when Allah gives a blessing to this person, or he says, oh, Allah has honored me. And then when he has tested him, he says, Allah has like humiliated me. So my teacher asked us, he said, which response is good? Which response is good? And a lot of us said, oh, the first response was good. He said, when Allah gives him blessings that Allah has honored, he said, no, both are wrong reactions. You don't assume that when Allah gives you a blessing or when Allah gives you a test that this is a punishment, or that you just focus on how you can react. But you keep a good opinion of Allah, meaning that Allah does not intend bad for his creation. He does not intend, Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You remember who he is and what he has said about himself. And we project a lot. Projection is something we talk about in psychology, right? That people can have their own feelings towards themselves about something, and they could project that onto other people. We project onto Allah. So a person, for example, who, doesn't like themselves or has low self-esteem or doesn't, who hates themselves, they might project that onto Allah. Oh, Allah hates me. This is just another reinforcement. This is why doing the work is so important, because we don't realize how much we put onto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But looking for meaning and looking for meaning is like looking for value. It's not necessarily that you're saying like, oh, this is Allah means this or Allah means that, right? But like you're looking for meaning. You came here, you got the answer, you say, oh, alhamdulillah, this was, I got value from this. And you attribute it to Allah, because you wouldn't be here if Allah did not will you for you to be here, right? So it's looking for meaning is different than saying Allah, this is like having an absolute set definition of why Allah is doing something. We can contemplate and we could say, maybe Allah intends this, or maybe Allah's trying to give me this through the test, and maybe this is why Allah tested me this way, but we don't speak for Allah if we're not connected to the akhirah. And I mean like a genuinely deep connection where you read the ayat and you understand in your heart of hearts that is a reality, that the truths Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you about the akhirah are a reality. That when he says that a child, that we know from our faith that a person will not lose a child unless that child awaits for them, and that child becomes a means for them to go to Jannah, and that child waits for them at the doors of Jannah, right? That nothing is ever lost if you think about this, especially when it comes to loss, because especially in our faith, the body ends, but the soul does not. That they are living, except simply a veil is between us and them. Simply a veil. You know what that means? It means that Had Allah lifted this veil, you would see your loved ones. You would see the ones that they're not lost. You just can't see them right now. So our faith actually gives us this empowering way to feel like nothing we really lose is ever lost permanently. But if all you're connected to is this world, tests become so much harder. That even, for example, we know that there's been over the course of history, there's been a lot of female infant killings, right? In the Quran, Allah speaks this, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةِ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, right? That when Allah gives us the scene on the day of judgment, when the infant girl is going to be asked for what crime were you killed for? So even her, do you know that even in our faith, for example, that a goat who got its horns, cut off is going to, because that's a lot of pain for the goat, is going to be brought to justice on the day of judgment. Even an animal, talk about animal rights, right? And it's like, we're disconnected from these truths because we don't spend a lot of time. And this is all a reminder to myself first, like we all, need to spend more time cultivating a greater knowledge of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he lost his children, right, there's a beautiful dua that he makes that along the lines of like, the heart is heavy, like basically he describes the emotion, but we do not say except what pleases Allah. I should look it up, but like you look up how the Prophet ﷺ responded. It's a beautiful dua where he basically first addresses his own emotions, like that basically do you know it? Yeah. Yes. So thank you so much. The heart is sad and the tears are falling, but we do not say except what pleases Allah, and inna lillahi, and to Allah we return, right? So even we have these examples, and think of the worst struggles, right? You won't see, not in the Quran. Loss of a child, Yaqub alayhi salam, and did he not cry? He cried. He cried till he went blind. Allah does not say that you're not allowed to be in pain. But he's telling you and I want to give you this example. When Yaqub was crying, it's the Prophet Jacob, when he was crying so much that he was like nonstop, that his own sons came to him and said, like, basically like, what are you doing to yourself, right? How did he respond? He said, Ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah, but he also said, and I know from Allah what you do not know. That's meaning. What you see me suffering, I'm going to cry because I'm in pain, but I know that this is not in vain, basically. Allah wouldn't put me through this if he didn't have something to offer me. And there are many things to connect to. And I really like the story of Malik ibn Dinar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Malik ibn Dinar this is the story, my go-to story when I feel like I really want to connect to the akhirah and just what Allah holds for us. Malik ibn Dinar was basically an alcoholic. This is a famous story, and he became Imam Malik, right, later on. And he just, he's someone that we look up to, right? And he's known now so basically at his time, there was a period of time where he was an alcoholic. He was struggling with alcohol. He said there was not a sin that I did not do. Okay. And anyways, he got married and he had a beautiful daughter, which he loved more than anything. I'm really paraphrasing, cutting this story short, but basically first he lost his wife, and he drank alcohol so much that his daughter, when she was a toddler, she would come and move the alcohol away from his mouth, right? And then there was a period where he worked on getting away from the alcohol for a period, and then he lost his daughter. Imagine this. Imagine you work on, you say, okay, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna stop, doing this thing, and then Allah tests you again, and you lose your daughter. Right? What did he do? He drank so much that he basically like knocked out because of it, and he had a dream. This dream, basically, there was this beast chasing him, right? And in the dream, there was this like open space, and there was this like really ugly looking vicious beast chasing him. And in whatever direction he went, he found this beast chasing him. He kept running away. He found an old man. He asked this old man for help. Help me. Which way should I go? He said, I am weak. I cannot help you. Right. And so he kept running back and forth. And then the man said, oh, just go to this direction, the edge. So he goes all the way to this edge, and he sees a beautiful field with all of these children playing. And he sees his daughter. And she comes to him and she sits on his lap. And she says to him a verse in the Quran. أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن يَخْشَعُوا قُلُوبَهُم لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Isn't it time? This is in Surah Al-Hadid. Isn't it time for those who believe to humble their hearts to the remembrance of Allah? You should look up the story. I probably butchered it because I said it so concisely, but really look it up. When he got up, he went to pray Fajr at the He made wudu and he went to pray. The Imam was recited that ayah. And that's the story that made Imam. But look at this. It's that he was connected to what? That what you're going through has meaning. That what you lost is not really lost. And a lot of us are disconnected from what Allah holds for us, from his promises, from what he tells us is true. And we believe what shaitan and the people in society tell us is real, right? But Allah's promise is true. And he says this to us throughout the Quran. Yeah, and that's a really good point, because a lot of times we wait until we are tested, because Allah does not test us constantly. Allah, out of his rahmah, even in the Quran, Allah says that he rotates the days upon the people, meaning that you'll find that you'll have times of ease, and then it's your friend's turn, she's tested. Then time passes and you get tested, right? So Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. He does not test a person after, and even through the hardship you find ease, and so but if we always wait, what happens is we don't work on our hearts during times of ease, and then when tests happen, we want our hearts to snap into action, feel, be close, why aren't you, we don't have anything to access. So this is why in times of ease, we take advantage. We use that time to get close to Allah. We don't want to be like those who, when Allah tests, we're so close, and then when Allah gives us ease, we forget about Allah, because Allah gives us that example in the Quran, right? Those who are on a ship or in the water, and the waters are coming towards them from every direction, and then they pray to Allah mukhlisan, very sincere, right? And then they believe, they didn't believe in Allah before, then they believe. And then when Allah gives them basically to safety, they go back to their ways. So we have to ask ourselves, how am I nourishing myself in times of ease? Yeah. Do you have a question? Oh, anybody else have any questions? All right, we can wrap up here. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you guys. Assalamu alaikum.
If you would like to listen to more, please donate to www.icnyu.org/donate. For more of our virtual programs, go to www.icnyu.org/classes. If you have any questions, email us at info@icnyu.org.